This was funded by the good people on patreon.com/alphajshow.
1, 2, 3, 4. Who's that knocking at my door? 5, 6, 7, 8. Hurry up and don't be late. 9, 10, 11, 12. Got a secret I can tell. Clap your fins, flip your tail. School's out, ring a bell. 1, 2, 3, 4. Who's that knocking at my door? 5, 6, 7, 8. Hurry up and don't be late. 9, 10, 11, 12. Got a secret I can tell. Clap your fins, flip your tail. School's out, ring a bell.
Quite possibly one of the biggest shows of the early 2010s, Fishhooks is an interesting show. It's generally considered a mediocre show. The ratings on many user sites seem to be pretty low, and I don't seem to find many of its fans anywhere. Despite this, it went on to have 110 episodes within a little under 4 years on the network. Clearly there was something that this show did that many of us either don't see or don't talk about, but we're not there yet. So for those of you who don't know and wish to know more about the show, Fishhooks is a Disney animated series surrounding the trio of Milo, Oscar, and Bee, having an atypical high school life. It's filled with adventure, drama, and romance, all within the environment of a group of connected fish tanks. Now this is the part where I dive into the creator, like what I did with the other Rise and Fall videos. C.H. Greenblatt, well respected, well talked about. Jonan Vasquez, well respected, well talked about. Craig McCracken, well respected, well talked about. Noah Z. Jones, I'm sure he's well respected, but I couldn't find that much information about him. So the question generally goes, how'd he get a show? Fish Tales was an early concept of 5 different concepts sent to Disney after Disney contacted him through his illustrations. This short, however, never fully aired anywhere and can only be seen through a select screenshots that have been passed around on the internet. Because of the success of his illustration career, he was able to form the beginnings of Fishhooks, and in hindsight, the talent on this show was huge. With this level of talent, there can't be that much terrible with the show, can there? Another notable thing about Fishhooks is the art style. Despite not picking up on it when I initially saw it here, I noted that it uses a stylized 2D and photo collage style of animation. We'd see this more aggressively in shows like Pickle and Peanut, but I don't have too much issue with the art style here. Granted, it's much better looking underwater than, well, above water, I guess. Now, Fishhooks was going up against, well, only one show from what it seems like. Wander Over Yonder and Gravity Falls wouldn't have started yet, and the replacements have ended earlier. The only other Disney animated show from what it seems like that Fishhooks was going up against is the juggernaut, Phineas and Ferb.
So Ferb, what do you want to do today?
So it would premiere September 3rd, 2010, with its first episode, Bee Stays in the Picture. As I said, Fishhooks spins the tale of a lot of high school-like events, like Picture Day. Milo and Oscar don't really mind it that much, but Bee is freaking out because of her future projections of how this photo will affect her promising acting career. I also think it was pretty clever to have photos sort of represent their characters. Joctopus is hurting people, Albert is known for being very clear, Koi is known for just being big, and Clemantha, well, is voiced by Alex Hurst. Which, I must see him voice Clemantha in person. I cannot believe this is the voice actor for Clemantha. But speaking of her, she's always in the middle of situations she has no real stake in. They also plant the seeds for a lot of tiny things that will be expanded on within the series, like a good first episode should, like Bee's compulsive need to control her public image, and Clemantha's infatuation with Oscar. Bee ends up sneezing within her photo, and while not showing the photo to the audience, it's heavily implied that that photo is a photo of Bee sneezing and she cannot retake it. I love the clever shots of the photographer wincing and Bee freaking out to the point where she needs to be held back by Oscar and Milo. So while having a pretty standard setup to the story, it has some pretty good attempts at comedy.
Fire in the hole!
Hey, what are you kids doing out here after the last bell?
Nothing.
My locker was trash cans don't really talk.
Works for me.
I know the main joke here is the nonchalant reaction of the teacher, Mr. Baldwin, who yes, is a male seahorse, and yes, is pregnant. The true comedy here comes from protagonist Milo, who snugly sneaks in "Trash cans don't talk" before the giant explosion you just saw. Because the yearbook photos, yes, the ones that look like giant slices of cheese that logically couldn't fit within a locker, are not in the locker, they come up with another plan. Distract Clemantha and steal them from the yearbook office. Another thing I should probably bring up, I should probably do it now before I get it all over the comments section. Because of the success of Rick and Morty, a show that came out after, people associate Oscar's voice with Morty. However, he originally used that cadence here, and honestly, you can go either way with how it fits either character. I bring that up because Verlin's performance of Oscar in this episode is marvelous. The way he cries when he realizes that his name is the passcode, which two questions. One, the phone clearly shows numbers, not the standard letters under numbers that many flip phones had. And also, did he move away from Clemantha before saying this? Because it's implied that he's still crying at the table. Anyway, I love that scene. And they go through this amazingly over-exaggerated sequence of avoiding Clemantha's traps, at least for the most part. And we get to this scene here.
This is it? Ugh, just don't scream.
B, you're beautiful. Be beautiful is part of your name.
But I don't look like a movie star.
B, you just snuck into a yearbook office, saved me from pearls and lasers flying all over the place, all just to get that picture, which is P.S. totally awesome.
Shut up, Milo.
This is a really good first episode. It had a lot of comedy, the high school element fit in naturally and prominently. Each of the trio had their time to shine. There was some action, a few tiny inklings of romance, and we even got a wholesome / heartwarming moment. This honestly couldn't have been a better first impression. You're probably thinking to yourself, man, I'd love a hoodie like Alpha J's. But focus here. You probably should be asking, how could B take that photo if she was already getting prepared to sneeze? And to that I answer with, it's a cartoon. So they decide to keep the photo, as it was perfectly fine, but they nearly forget about Oscar.
Clemantha, what are you doing in the car with my man?
Oscar, why didn't you tell me B was your girlfriend? A smart clam, don't share her man. Please get out of my car.
As you see here, they inject a lot of tiny romantic or pseudo-romantic moments when it comes to B and Oscar. This will come into play later. Unfortunately for Clemantha, she's out of a man and drives away, with B saving Oscar, but only acting as if she's romantically involved, which Oscar wants to forget. Overall, it's a very fun episode that shows you some of the crazy adventures the main characters are going to tackle. So now that you have a feel for the show, let's get into The Rise. If you've noticed, I take on a different way of tackling each rise for each series that I've talked about so far. For Harvey Beaks, I centered in on the episodes many of us missed. For Invader Zim, I focused on the many facets of the show that made it gain a cult following. For Wander, I focused on the first episodes before it hit Disney XD. This one is pretty clear and simple. If you want to understand why fishhooks became so popular, you must understand the three main characters, so part 1 of 3, Milo. So let's do a deep underwater dive of one of the main protagonists.
B, stop what you're doing and look at me. Do you think I'm selfish?
A self-described party guy, Siamese fighting fish. He's a very fun-loving, loyal, impulsive, and reactionary sort of character. He serves as a comic relief in many episodes. His bombastic and aloof behavior serves as sort of a contrast between Oscar and B. In the second episode ever, Fish Out of Water, we get a lot of Milo's traits a lot better than in the pilot, or first episode. In classic high school series fashion, we have an introduction into the story using roll call to introduce the characters. Of course, the one character that's needed is not there, as he'll join the story in an over-the-top fashion. His lack of self-awareness, while a flaw, does not hurt his character in terms of enjoyability. For fishhooks to work, they would need a high-energy person that isn't a school bully, and he plays that role well, being voiced by Kyle Massey.
Mr. Baldwin, you are never gonna guess what happened this time.
You were swallowed by an
I
eel.
was swallowed by an eel.
We also learned that the teacher, Mr. Baldwin, did not know he can get pregnant, but did anyway. Yay.
You probably didn't know that male seahorses could get pregnant.
Well, neither did I.
That's a very interesting thing to lead us into on the second episode. However, he does call out Milo for being selfish and making everything about himself, which leads into a very revealing next scene.
Selfish fish? Me? A selfish fish? Oscar! Hey, you don't think I'm selfish, do you?
Selfish and self-conscious. He doesn't think long-term, which is typical for his character type. You'd expect him to ask for forgiveness before permission and cry for help before thinking about if he would need help in said situation. One thing this episode brings up, a little off-topic tangent if you will, is that you would think in a world full of fish tanks that going outside the tank would have been built up to at least be a bigger deal. However, the way to portray it here is that it's not a big deal, even though they've never ventured that far in their life up to that point. It just seems like an idea you would just have to do. Like what would happen if Timmy revealed his fairies, or what would happen if Squidward became SpongeBob and SpongeBob became Squidward. But getting back to this specific episode, Milo jumps out the tank without waiting for water suits, which is funny because after he does and it fails terribly, the show shows us that it would have taken mere seconds, or at least a short enough time for them to deliver, Oscar and B to repair them, and for them to shoot out of the water to rescue him. Now, if you've seen any high school / school oriented show, or just had a conversation in high school, this is your typical character ditches school to go somewhere cooler and gets caught up in a danger episode. Except they don't appear to be ditching despite having to go back to school in the end. So after scolding Milo for being selfish and thinking about himself and what he wants to do all the time, they validate his selfish behavior and thinking about himself and what he wants to do all the time by going on the adventure that they initially declined. With these water suits, they explore around, and this is where you see the art style in its fullest potential, whether for better or for worse. Outside the tank, ironically enough despite what I said before. I think because the non-bluish and more complex nature of outside the tank, it looks more uncanny. And while that always isn't a good thing, it does have some great uses, like the danger, quote unquote, within this episode.
Something's coming!
So because of their joy walk, B and Oscar are now caught in the danger of the cat. Milo can save them, but will he?
And there's something I gotta tell you.
What is it, Oscar?
I wanted to tell you that I'm a plumber,
Excuse me?
and you're a princess. It's like we're both in this giant video game.
More on that dynamic later, but Milo also realizes that his selfishness is getting other people hurt, and even goes as far as to sacrifice himself, showing to the audience that he is willing to put himself in danger in order to save his friends. If you ever want to know about Milo as a character, this is the episode for you. Now while it's done here in a pretty good way, you also have episodes like Dropsy, where his selfish behavior can be seen as jerkish. He manipulates both Oscar and the whole school into thinking that he's sick in order to get benefits, and despite getting what he wanted at first, he wants more, which leads him into reaping what he sows by being treated like a serious medical case. In that episode, you can say he was really unlikable, which is the point, and it also shows that while Milo is fun-loving and optimistic, it doesn't overshadow his need to getting things, even if that means stepping over a few people in order to receive it. In fact, in Happy Birth Fish Joctopus, more on that episode later, he completely sells out Oscar to school bully Joctopus, and is upset when he realizes that Oscar considers Joctopus a bigger friend to him than to Milo. He doesn't even get his comeuppance within that episode, as Oscar saves both his and B's butt at the end. But again, more on that later. Overall, Milo is a bombastic, hyperactive, fun-loving party animal, whose selfishness and short-sighted behavior gets him into trouble, especially with his best friend / brother, Oscar. Oscar is a different beast altogether. Voiced by Justin Roiland, Oscar is a very nerdy, anxious, awkward catfish / Siamese fighting fish hybrid, who alongside B and Milo is a protagonist of Fish Hooks. Oscar is heavily known for the two things I said earlier, and a third thing, being very nerdy, completely into video games to the point where it becomes an arc for his character, and is casually mentioned in a lot of episodes. Very awkward and anxious, mostly due to his worrying, cautious, voice of reason character type, but also for his intense attraction to B, third main character, who we'll get to later, which is referenced in many episodes of Fish Hooks. So the episode I want to highlight that highlights each of these behaviors is The Tale of Oscar Fish.
Oscar?
What?
So if you ever wanted to see undeniable proof of Oscar's lack of confidence, it is shown here in its clearest, most concise form. As this cautious, anxious, worrisome fish storms into his room, he journals about his totally not self-insert Sir Oscar Fish the Brave. In this journal, this fish crushed public speaking, took down monsters, and was well comfortable talking to ladyfish. I do think this speaks well to his character, as he isn't as social as Bee or Milo, for example, and expresses a lot of his emotions to himself. I also enjoy how this episode gets straight to the point, to give as much time as possible to the rest of the story. Through a series of mishaps, he bangs his head very violently on a stop sign, and gets magically teleported to this medieval area that looks very similar to his journal. Being a very cynical and skeptical person, he decides to join in on the weird dream. I do have to say, and I know this is the second time I've said it, this area looks really well for the art style that the show committed to.
So from now on, you are Milo the Meek, and you shall call me Sir Oscar Fish the Brave. Oh man, this is so cool.
While still retaining the fish tank aesthetic, it does look like a completely different area, which is a good thing. The episode awkwardly tries to piece together Bee and Milo trying to find Oscar, with Oscar doing brave things in a dreamlike confident state. I didn't like how they kept switching it back and forth, because unlike a musical montage, they switch back and forth incredibly fast, when you could have combined the lengths of both ideas into 2 segments and kept it more understandable. For a show as straightforward as Fishhooks, less is truly more. We also end up finding out that Oscar's design is quite common in the fish tank world. On a more positive note, I did enjoy how Esmargot was Rapunzel, because her character is highly known for sliming up the place as a sea slug, and that is sort of implied with Rapunzel's long hair. This episode comes to a height when we learn that Oscar is supposed to rescue the princess, which funnily is Clamantha, or an equivalent to her character. That is when we learn that Oscar is not in a dream. In fact,
Then this giant scoop comes out of the sky, takes him away. But your friend, he started moving. Huh? And then he was dropped back into some other tank with a castle in it.
and that sort of breaks Oscar out of his confident state, which makes a lot of sense. He was confident before when he knew he wasn't gonna get hurt, but he also had a lot of fun and was actually happy for once.
Well, why does everyone look like someone I know? I mean, that's weird, right?
Bro, do you see all the Oscars behind us?
That's racist. So, with the Oscar lookalikes now by Oscar's side, gathered by Bee and Milo, they charge at the dragon, which actually moves a lot better than you would imagine for its design and the art style. It's not a true battle, but more of a comedic one that ends quite quickly and ironically with the stop sign gag once more. We learn in this episode that Oscar, while nerdy, can be brave, and does think about Bee a lot, even if it was curved when Clamantha was revealed to be the princess. His admiration for Bee does come up quite a bit, like in episodes like Doris Floor's Gorgeous, or even though he met the girl he dreamed about, he couldn't go through with it because despite her being exactly what he envisioned her to be, his eyes are still on Bee. We also learn that in Assignment Babies, Oscar can be just as short-sighted as Milo, as despite being a great parent, he doesn't articulate the words well, that he, along with the other students, are being scammed by a little fish pretending to be a baby. It's like that Jimmy Neutron episode, but I'm not sure which is worse. But speaking of Bee, Bee is a very outgoing, charismatic, confident, overly dramatic goldfish who attends Fishwater High with her best friends Milo and Oscar. Voiced by Chelsea Kane, her dream is to become a famous actor, which you'll be able to tell within a few episodes, as she sees everything through that perspective. She acts out roles, even if there isn't a play, movie, or story going on. She'll state lines, and she'll reject doing things, because they're not in her area of expertise. On the whole, she is the high school darling teenage girl. She's not bullied that much by anyone, aside from maybe Joctopus sometimes. She's very shy around her parents. She's seen as very pretty to her male peers, and I'm sure female peers as well. She's super popular, and is the co-leader of the girl group of fish within the school, and quite frankly, it's pretty clear that she's the top lady in the school. However, rather than showing you an episode revolving around that, it's pretty clear that I should show you an episode revolving around the rejection of all of these things, because that would show you her character a lot clearer. Luckily, there is one: fishing for compliments.
Hey, Samantha!
Wow, B! Everyone in school seems to really like you.
Hi, B.
They set up in a straightforward way what I just told you. However, the saving grace in not making this episode pretty dry and predictable is the other layer of what's going on. The Swirlies are in town and are selling tickets. Essentially, the Swirlies is a fish-style roller derby that is done in a swirling toilet bowl. How the owner never found out about this is pretty unknown, by the way. You would think that this would make a lot of noise, but you know.
I like you, have a cupcake. I like you, have a cupcake. You didn't get one because I don't like you.
What? Why?
I don't know.
So even though B sees popularity as easy and no big deal, despite one person not liking her out of the entire school, teachers and staff included, that's one too many. And that sends her into an overdramatic, aggressive stance on trying to correct Albert. That's really the only way I can put it, because her life mission now is to get Albert to like her. And if you've seen episodes like this, the structure is pretty standard. She tries, it doesn't work. She tries again, it doesn't work. Rule of threes, I don't wear pants. But because she's driven, which while it helps her promising acting career, does make her look likely obsessive in non-career situations like with Albert, she even gets to the point where she's somewhat jealous of others having a friendship that she does not have. The progression from a slight discomfort to total obsession ramped up quick but not in an unexpected way, which I appreciate. Also, this is one of the bearable Chelsea episodes, but more on that later. That is a super plus.
Well, you may want to rethink that when you see that I brought you tickets to tonight's swirly races! I've got something for you, Albert! A friendship bracelet!
All because one boy, who she does not have a romantic attraction to, does not like her. The reason I'm showing such a contrasting episode to what I mentioned as her overall personality is because both sides make B B. If B didn't have this side here, the one that's portrayed very prominently within this episode, she'd essentially just be a more cheerful Chelsea. But if B never had that outgoing, happy-go-lucky side, she'd be Clemantha. Having both sides is what makes her both entertaining as a main character and a well-rounded person who doesn't always have episodes that show her in the best light. It also gives her chances to change into a better character, which the audience could appreciate.
This is for your own good. Well, Albert's mostly. Run, Albert! You're free!
So with Albert being freed against B's will, he slips into the toilet in one of the most hilarious moments within the episode. This scene here, where they try to save him, it's actually really cool looking. Although B does most of the legwork, every scene except this right here looks really well done. This scene here just looks a little lazy with how they're moving, ruining the Swirlies, an event that only comes once a year, at least to their part of the fishbowl, made an entire audience not like B.
You know what? I don't care! I'm sick of worrying what other people think of me. I like me.
I like you. You've always been so desperate for everyone to like you, and that's so obnoxious. So B, would you be my friend?
This is the only part of the episode where you can raise an eyebrow and go like, what? So the one time B decides to accept someone not liking her is the time in which you reward her with a friendship? That seems a little against the point of the episode, but considering that Albert and B have friendly and casual moments later on in the series, I guess it was just a way to bring it back to the status quo. However, I feel like that hurts the episode's intention quite a bit. Also, the town is a jerk trope, as they're completely okay with a 14-year-old fish getting flushed down the toilet for entertainment. B would have moments like this with her family, like in Queen Bee, and also in her career, like in Hooray for Hamsterwood. She's a control freak in a tiny sense when it comes to her image, and like in the first episode, you see here that while she slowly learns to accept others' criticisms and thoughts and not let it affect her personally, that is her inner arc, at least throughout the series. So with an optimistic, loud, but a little selfish ball of blue bombastic energy, an overly anxious, neurotic, nerdy mess, and an overly dramatic, confident, and slightly aggressive promising fish actress, there is bound to be many adventures that come along in this high school format. However, with every rise, there is a fall, and this show is no different. So, let's talk about the fall. Fishhooks went on for a long time, so its fall is attributed to many facets of the show and what's around it. While I do like the main characters, the art style, and many episodes, there is a reason the show gets a mixed reception. So let's dissect these many aspects.
They're gonna put a Fish Ever 22 here.
But we already have Fish Ever 21.
Sure, but this is Fish Ever 22.
There isn't that much information on the start of Fishhooks, but one thing I kept seeing all over is this quote. President of Entertainment Gary Marsh said of the show, "The Fishhooks team has created one of the most original, inventive animated series on television, bringing an ingenious twist to the classic archetypes of high school life." I think while that's PR ready, and that looks like a nice statement of the show, it's highly disingenuous. And in some areas, you're really stretching the adjectives here. Fishhooks is nowhere near the most original or inventive animated series, even in the early 2010s, let alone for television. And I wouldn't call the twist ingenious, but rather enough. Fishhooks is enough. It's funny enough. It looks good enough. It's original enough to not be considered a terrible show. It doesn't go above and beyond and show something that we haven't seen in animation, as the quote here implies. A great example is Shark Tale. A lot of people see that movie as taking the height of another underwater movie and making one similar but with this gangster aspect. People see it as not necessarily needing to take place underwater. Is Fishhooks the equivalent? Not really. They do add in concepts that would only work if they were fish and if they were underwater, but if you're even a decent fan of other shows that happen in school, their twists aren't anything big. Assignment Babies is your home ec characters get a baby episode. Milo Gets a Ninja is your standard character gets a tough friend to be their muscle episode. Funny Fish is your standard character gets in a big fight with a bully and has to somehow survive episode. They're not new and their twists aren't anything big, revealing, or even enough to be considered ingenious. The biggest identity, while a great aspect of the show, is not original. Now, coming from a person who has just praised the show for a while, yes, I do enjoy the show, but I'm not going to ignore the fact that I've seen a lot of what the show offers, even back in 2010. I'm sure Ned's the Classified has done a good quarter of these episodes, and that's not even high school, that was junior high.
What's all this?
Work. Oh.
No thank you.
Now, a controversial point, but one that needs to be said nonetheless. Fishhooks doesn't intend to stand on any grounds, potentially offending someone with its writing standards or actions. Now, before I go into why, I must state this. I am not saying it absolutely needs to in order to be a good show, but what I've noticed about great shows is that they stand on a few rules, even if they're heavily debated. I consider Regular Show to be a great show, and that show had people angry about how it handled romance. I'd consider Adventure Time to be a very influential show, but that show clearly stood on a comic book identity. SpongeBob, a great show. People are angry in the way that some episodes portray SpongeBob. Phineas and Ferb, great show. However, some of these endings were really stretching the bounds of believability because of its religious sticking to status quo. Fishhooks rarely made me feel any emotion other than contentment. Slight annoyance, on the other side of the spectrum, maybe giving a few awes here and there. Sure, but we'll get into why later. It didn't feel like it took any risk or chances. The show was extremely safe, and it was made to be extremely safe, and that sort of tactic, especially with the high school element, really makes it look like you're setting up the show to reach the widest audience possible with the least amount of personalization to the show. It also feels somewhat that it was trying to fill a quota of hashtag relatable Disney shows. I've seen this move before, from your My Night and Me's to your Cleveland shows. Even if you make your audience sad, angry, or afraid, that at least is some form of a major emotion, but just making them happy enough or satisfied enough will wear off, and with 3 seasons I can see why the show was going to go away sooner than later. Also, I didn't want the script to be as long as it is, even though it's still extremely long, but take this part as a summary of 3 different sections, but the characters also didn't help. A lot of them didn't do anything or grow or just evolve. And only a few minor characters change, like Joctopus, Albert, and Mr. Baldwin in episodes like Freshwater 5-0, Glass Man Standing, and Labor of Love respectively. Not the best long-term plan if you want to build a dedicated fan base at least.
Wait. What?
Uh-oh.
We're the same age? And she already has her own TV show?
Now, while Fishhooks started with no one other than Phineas and Ferb jumping in animation-wise, that wouldn't always be the case. During its September 2010 to April 2014 period, Wander Over Yonder, Gravity Falls, The New Mickey Mouse Show, Ultimate Spider-Man, Avengers, Earth Mightiest Heroes, Hulk and the Agents of Smash, Motor City, Tron Uprising, Avengers Assemble, and Kick Buttowski were all premiering / going strong. And even if there were to go a year more, Star Vs would have premiered. When you see these shows, it's clear that a few also became more memorable and better received next to Fishhooks. Gravity Falls has become a great hit, with many of its staff members going on to make shows of their own. Kick Buttowski would at least give us a fresh, at least at the time, Daredevil cartoon that made it stand out incredibly. Wander, while not on Disney Channel for long, as I stated in that Rise and Fall, grew an intense cult following because of the quality of the show. Even for superhero fans, despite the quality of some of these shows, Marvel fans are being catered to more than ever. It's clear that at some point, Fishhook's stick was going to get old, and unlike Phineas and Ferb, it didn't have much to build on top of to create that foundation of becoming a smash hit. Maybe Fishhooks was on the wrong channel, I don't know. Maybe if it was on Nickelodeon, it could have become something more? We don't know.
I totally love watching these fish. I mean, they're just like you and me, only underwater.
Bah, fish smish. Let's switch back to the tarantula for a while.
There's also this skit that goes at the end of all the episodes revolving around this snake and mouse duo. It's a pretty creative idea, but it stays as a seed. There's no payoff to watching all of this. They echo something that happened in one episode, and it stands as an extra joke for your buck. It's also strategic, as if you were looking at this as a way to keep people watching towards the end, even with credits, this is a fantastic way to do so. It's just a harmless joke skit at the end of every episode, similar to the puppets in the credits of Chowder. And if you were looking at this as a way to keep people watching to the end, this is a fantastic way to do so. I wouldn't say that these made the fall of Fishhooks, but they definitely didn't contribute to the rise, and definitely didn't help rescue the fall. They also weren't always good, so imagine seeing a bad credit skit on top of a bad episode, and you will get a considerable chunk of my viewing experience. Beyond them being harmless, I didn't understand their choice of including them in. They cameo in a few episodes, but for the most part, they don't do much of anything in the grand scheme. There's no episode in which they play a major role. It's just something tacked on. I'm sure there are fans of Snake and Mouse, and I definitely have some of my favorite skits, but it's very low on a reason to watch Fishhooks, and again, definitely didn't help.
I just had a really weird dream and you were in it.
I don't really need to know what goes on in that head of yours.
We were all fish!
Without trying to make this go on too long, I at least want to point out a good part in the fall. There was a small special towards the end of Fishhooks where the characters went human in this dreamlike period. Milo is self-aware that he always wasn't human, and that remains a top concern of his, as he goes through living life not in water. His goal, however, is to return to that lifestyle underwater where he belongs. It's a pretty creative pair of episodes, as it's a 2-part episode special. They actually do an ingenious twist on the character must maintain party reputation aspect. We also do get a breath of fresh air, pun somewhat intended, as fans of the show get to see characters they grew to love as their officially in canon human counterparts. I like Pool Party Panic, but I feel like it was tragically too late for many people to enjoy. I don't think many people even know that this exists because they hopped off the Fishhooks hype train. It's one of those episodes in a series that if it was earlier, more fans would have definitely stuck to the show because of the lore, canon, and world building aspect. But at the same time, we don't get many creative episodes like this. As I said before, it wasn't the goal. The goal was to appeal to everyone using the high school format. It's definitely unfortunate, and I'd love to get to it in a dedicated video. So now that you know some of the aspects of the fall, I feel as though I've stalled long enough. The rest of this video is dedicated to the sea elephant in the room, Oscar and B.
Is it so weird to have a shrine dedicated to somebody you like?
If it's like this one, then yes.
Maybe we should hold hands, you know, for safety reasons?
You make it sound so easy. Of course, you make everything sound easy. It's your gift. Even though you are the fish girl of my dreams, I don't think we're right for each other. What I'm trying to say is that I guess I'm still waiting for that certain fish that fits me just right. Goodbye, Doris Flores Gorgeous.
Oscar?
What? The end? I just want you to know that I think you're really
Ugly! I heard that some dude was totally giving you the eye!
It's true! Oh my gosh, she's so cute, and
What dude?
I have friends that like me.
Especially me!
Yeah.
I hope you liked that montage because there's way more where that came from. Oscar has hinted in nearly every episode that he has a big crush on B, to the point where it's pretty much impossible for you to not know. The series also laid a romance arc dedicated to this idea, and since your boy is known for talking about romance episodes for some reason, let's dissect this arc. So while Oscar has never had the courage to tell B how he truly feels about him around season 2, we get introduced to another character from another school.
And Chelsea, maybe you're wondering how you can argue for video game? Well, there's the fun factor and the enhanced hand-eye coordination and
Don't forget winning! What's your name?
me? I'm Oscar, my name is.
Ooh, that sounded like a syntax error. I'm captain of the Saltwater High Debate Team. I came over to check out the competition, but I didn't realize he was gonna be so cute. You could say we're going to hang out together after school.
Yes! Yes!
It's a date. Gamer's eye.
This is Angela, and she'll play a major role in this arc. Oscar perceives her as perfect, both loving nerds and also having a great interest in video games, all seen throughout this episode. They spend the first of 6 episodes I'll be talking about establishing so, and I'm sure you're wondering, where does all of this leave B?
I know this has to be hard for you.
What does?
The whole Angela thing. This isn't the way my life was supposed to turn out, but it did. You and me can always be friends.
Oh, Oscar, you're so funny.
Yeah, funny. But look, I just don't want things to be weird between us, you know?
Me either?
This is a really interesting scene to me because she on one hand is taking this really well, but there's a part of me that believes she understands the implications of this and is taking this a little too well for that to be her true, genuine reaction. Now since we're on the topic, it could be because she's pushing those feelings really far down and not acting upon them. Oscar and Angela have a great time on their date. They don't play video games because within this episode, it revolves around debate and also character dates other character who they're competing with episode. I've seen this around football, but also just another common high school rivalry, but surprisingly enough, they do avoid the high school rivalry aspect, at least for this episode. However, they introduce doubt in the episode by having Oscar lose his notes for the debate, thinking that Angela took them, as she is shown to be extremely competitive. However,
You just pretended to like me so you could win the debate.
Oscar, I don't care about winning or losing the debate anymore. I just want to spend time with you.
and this is going to be super interesting in the Love Arc episode 4, because it is shown here that she does more than just video games, even if video gaming is her primary passion. She's the captain, remember that, of the debate team, loves scrapbooking, and she's into LARPing or live action role playing. Just remember that. Anyway, the episode ends with them being together. B approves of them at the end of the episode, to which, I'm sorry, I just have a tiny bit of skepticism here. But anyway, Love Arc episode 2, Guys Night Out. And we learn that Oscar and Angela are becoming a serious and steady relationship. However, I may need to take the time out for hypocritical, and hypocrisy over here.
Oscar, don't you know? Once a girl becomes your girlfriend, she changes.
Like a werewolf!
Albert here would go on a date with S. Margot as they have an attraction to each other. Milo would go on a few dates, including Fimberly, Palmella Hamster, Shiloh, and literally a mascot of a company called Groonian Granola. And Jumbo Shrimp here, you know what? That was too far. I'm sorry. I shouldn't call him that. So what's his name? Oh, so Jumbo Shrimp here, we'll get to you in Love Arc episode 5. This episode, while not giving out much information more than that, is a fun episode and needed within the arc. We actually get their friends' reactions to Oscar getting serious with Angela, trying to make this the best night of their lives, under the assumption that after this, Oscar is not going to have that much time left to do his own thing, because majority of it will be with his girlfriend. It's a fun episode, and lightly treads on the Angela x Oscar arc, but it's definitely needed in order to explain it all. Love Arc episode 3, Oscar is a playa. Simply put, a misunderstanding episode, done right I may add, about Oscar being perceived as a cheater.
Are you cold? Let me get the heater. Oh, darn it. This heater button always sets off the radio and all I get is this stupid saxophone romantic station. So, S. Margot, Is it hot enough in here for you?
I wonder what would have given S. Margot that impression. This also isn't a heavy Angela episode either, but it does dive more onto the girl side of this whole relationship, as the former Guys Night Out, it delved more on the guy's side. So as you would think, even though B knows that Oscar would never do such a thing, wording is everything.
What if you had an opportunity with a girl?
You mean Angela?
No, another girl. A girl you've known a long time. One who could be right here in front of you. She could be nearby. One of your friends, perhaps? And nobody would ever know. Would you, just go for it?
It was such a needed scene, and couldn't have been built up to better. So as the guys planned the guys' night out, the girls plan a sting operation to catch Oscar in the act of cheating. Unfortunately, it doesn't go as planned, and he wasn't really cheating. You guys saw.
He adjusted my seat and buckled my seatbelt. It was the closest I've ever gotten to a boy in real life. I thought I was being romanced.
I guess Albert isn't a guy. Oh wait, that's actually an episode.
Hello, Jack the Pizza.
Hello, I'd like to place an order for a very special lady.
What would you like to order, ma'am?
Excuse me?
Ma'am, what would you like?
Anyway, they find out he isn't a playa, and also use swag unironically, but that's for another day. B ends up disguising as Angela to tell Oscar that he wasn't cheating, but just being nice. It also ends with Oscar trying to kiss a disguised B, and then realizing who really is Angela. But we'll get more on that in Love Episode Arc 4. Now, of all the episodes, this is the second most important episode of the arc. However, I'll boil it down to its essentials. Each character has their own problem before prom. B is going with Steve Jackson after mustering up the courage to ask, but can't seem to have fun when it's clear he isn't around. Milo is trying to find a date, as many girls around school are already being proposed to. Then when at prom, he and Randy Pincherson, basically the Tobias before Tobias, or Logan from Zoe 101 if he was a crab, basically they both date hamster twins. And no, not the one he was originally romantically with. Lastly, Oscar is trying to convince Angela to go to prom, but now she doesn't want to go. B's situation is interesting, to the love arc at least, because despite Oscar clearly being with Angela, they plant a few seeds for something major that happens later on.
Angela and I, we're having a blast. See?
Aw, you guys always have so much fun.
Yeah. B, would you?
Hold that thought, Oscar. I'm gonna go see if I can find Steve.
Oh, yeah, Steve, your date.
However, as perfect of a date he appears, that's just the thing, he disappears. After being locked in a closet for wanting to help clean up a mess, which, come on dude. I'd roast you if this video wasn't as long as it already is. B's perfect prom day is turning into a prom nightmare. Milo's sort of problem turns into a solution when he essentially realizes that if he has fun with his date, then it's a fun date. Oscar, however,
Can you stop playing that for like 2 minutes and dance with me, please?
But this is what we agreed to.
But I want you to be here with me.
I am with you.
No, you're not. You're just playing your dumb game.
yeah, it turns out to not go so well for either of them. What I enjoy about this episode is that while it doesn't make sense in a few aspects, there is strong and consistent in pretty much everything. Ever since the beginning episode, they've shown that Angela loves video games. She's made that quite clear. However, Oscar, while into video games, that's not his entire personality, and it's also pretty clear that he would sacrifice video games for the right person. Also in this episode, they keep things really consistent with the characters' voices, like for example, with Chelsea, she doesn't sing, but kind of just says the lyrics to the song. Also, this entire night would have been avoided if Steve Jackson learned how to yell. He never yells, even if he bangs the door louder and louder.
I thought tonight was gonna be the most special night of my life, and all I wanted was that one dance with you, B. I didn't mean to say that.
Whoa. B? Whoa. Whoa. Whoa!
Angela, wait!
Whoa! 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 Wowie! Wow!
And just like with Doris Floor is Gorgeous, even if this is the girl of his dreams, even if this girl is made quote just for him, he really just wants B. It didn't help that he saw B by herself, and with the assumption that Steve Jackson is giving her a good time. If there was ever a highlight of Fishhooks, this would be it. This here is what the entire arc is built to, in my opinion. B rushes out of prom, not having a dance or winning prom queen, enter Milo, and decides to drown her sorrows in milkshakes and tacos. Oscar, also out of a date, decides to check up on her.
This is supposed to be the most important night of our life, and I won't let your memories go down this way. You will not go without a dance, my lady, because I will give you that dance.
A dance with you actually sounds really nice.
really sure what to do.
It's such a great scene because it further blurs the lines of if they are friends or something more. It also gives us quite the payoff in this season, as by many, this is the best of season 2. This also means yes, Oscar and Angela are through. I mean, they should be, compatibility issues. However,
Oh my gosh! Is that a Headbox Extreme helmet?
Hey there. Where have you been?
Quick question.
Of course.
Is it okay if I date your ex-girlfriend, Angela?
Angela?
and that gives us a good segue into Love Arc 5, which is a quick one. The entire episode revolves around the aftermath of the prom, and Jumbo Shrimp and Angela dating. So when they said what they said before, remember, Jumbo Shrimp would do the exact same thing. Even when he requested permission first, there is still tension in the air. It's a really interesting episode. Angela still has spite for Oscar's slip-up, and it shows throughout. He gets his comeuppance quite thoroughly, but Angela never really does. Even though Oscar wanted to go to the prom with her, even though Oscar was given the okay that she'll do whatever it takes to not make prom not awful, and even though he only really got to that point because Angela brought a video game helmet to prom, I guess Oscar's in the wrong for mentioning the wrong woman. When you put it in that light, you can kind of see why Oscar needed to yeet out of that relationship. She at least redeems herself like 1/8 of the way by at least acknowledging that she would help Oscar get closer to being with B. But anyway, the last episode in this arc, Love Arc episode 6, just so happens to be the finale.
These past 4 years have been the best time of our lives. We've grown close. We've shared laughter and tears. Through it all, we've been there for each other. We'll never forget the good times we've had as friends.
We finally get B to admit, indirectly at least, that there may be something there for Oscar and it's not just a friendship. She totally rejects this around her parents, but to her best friend Chelsea, she admits a little more.
You finally realize you think you might like Oscar!
Chelsea, come on! Is it that bad? I've been feeling this way for a long time, actually. I just didn't realize.
Bet Oscar is your friend.
You went there with Michael. Michael was your friend, and now you're dating him.
Okay, but that's totally different. Michael's hot. I'm just looking out for you. Please, don't do anything I will regret.
I've been waiting to say this and I might as well say it at the end, but I don't think there's been more than one time that I enjoyed Chelsea as a character. Maybe it's because I've seen many Chelseas in my 20 or so years of living, but she's always been annoying, unlikable, and contributing to the bare minimum. Maybe that's the point, but that doesn't mean I should see her as anything other than an annoyance. I'd rather have a fish version of the person who runs the shop Bud in her place, and that doesn't even make sense. If anyone has been a good friend to B, it's Oscar. Also, literally, B points out a contradiction, and she clearly doesn't own up to her own double standard. And to be quite frank, I'm pretty sure they're only friends because the story archetype demands it. Anyway, Milo also talks about being the same. You see, Milo has planted a few seeds of his own. In an episode I didn't talk about, Milo's Magic Milkshake, it is revealed that Milo has a huge worry that his life has peaked. And it is no different here. He wants things to be the same because he only imagines it as being downhill from here, and that's a very interesting perspective. As considering Oscar wants to tell B how he feels, you can kind of see why he's against that idea.
I see you gentlemen are interested in one of our fine imported donkeys. I gotta have this donkey! But I have not shown you the best part. The ultimate prank fun button. Zabba dabba doo! Press it, my friend. I cannot wait to use this on Baldwin! Oh, this was our only prank donkey. And as you can see, it has gone, well, kablooey.
What in the world? Then why'd you blow it up? I'm sorry, but I can't be the only person who thinks that this dude is a full-blown idiot. Look, anyway, Milo instills fear in Oscar to not tell B. And he is a thorn in this idea, but for the best, ? You see, Oscar has always trusted Milo as a brother, but there are times where you need to trust yourself, and his flashback really made him realize that. Also, another really fantastic scene, and it's totally up there with the prom dance, is this scene here. This scene here with the weird growing tree has B acknowledge how great of a friend Oscar has been this whole time, asking why he's been so sweet to her. I love this scene because Oscar actually doesn't bow out. Originally, I was going to talk about how annoying this whole tease has been, because it's been after some time where we're waiting for a big payoff, but Fish Prom did just enough, as you can see just enough is a common theme here, to keep that rant from being a thing. Also the running time for this video, yeesh. But overall, this was an extremely cute scene. We also get B confronting her parents on how you should feel. All of this comes to a height during B's graduation speech, where Oscar reveals his feelings. B acknowledges them, but...
B, I'm gonna tell you something. It may mean we can't be friends anymore. I like you. Like you. More than friends. You're just
Oscar,
the most special.
Stop! I know how you feel. I just don't know how I feel yet.
However, she truly thinks about it, and among all the moments, she realizes that she actually does like Oscar back. It's not the greatest payoff, they could have done a lot more, and there are a lot of B Oscar episodes that I didn't even talk about. I do enjoy that there is at least some closure. Her parents clearly approve, knowing of all of this before she did, and everyone aside from possibly Chelsea are actually happy from this new revelation. They share a kiss, and finally, that is how Fish Hooks ends. You know, you wouldn't have thought that a seemingly average Disney show would have that much information. I didn't, but I do have to say, if you want to see a pretty decent high school censored comedy that has sprinkles of arcs and continuity throughout, just watch a little of this show and let these fish hook you in. I'm Alpha J, and thank you for watching. Just a short tidbit before the end card. These videos take a lot of time, a lot of research, and a lot of work. Even though they look great now, they can look even better with your support. Please consider supporting my Patreon. All of your money goes back into videos like these to make them look better. Plus there's different perks like behind the scenes videos, hot takes videos, and even getting your own personal review. So check it out, patreon.com/alphajshow. It is in the description, it is in the pinned comment. If you want to see the entire playlist for the Rise and Fall videos, click here. And if you want to see my previous video on the top animation shifts of Gumball, click here. Until then, special thanks to the patrons of May. And until next time, take care. Alpha out.